Hi, my name is Keith Cooper from Northlet Images. In this video today I'm going to have a quick look at monitor calibration. In particular, a question I was asked by somebody who had essentially calibrated the same monitor with two different monitor calibrators and wondered why they didn't look the same. You would think that you take a monitor calibrator, assuming it's working okay, and you run the process, you install the software, you're calibrating a monitor to a particular standard, that's it, you run the calibration, it's done, you look at a test image, fine, your monitor is calibrated. Then you run it with another calibrator and the results aren't quite the same. Is one wrong? No, I'm going to assume both the calibrators are actually not faulty or anything like that. It is not entirely unexpected. Does this mean that one is wrong, one is right, both are wrong? How do you know? Well, if you think about how monitors are calibrated, the idea is you calibrate a monitor to a known particular state. So you will set it to a particular brightness, you will set it to a particular color temperature. Now the color temperature is normally measured in K, so these two monitors here, because I've set them up for video use, have been calibrated to what is a very low color temperature, 4000 K. That's because it matches the lighting I've got in the room here. And hopefully if I show an image here and then print it, because it's viewed under the same lighting, they should look very similar. It's a bit of a kludge for the videos. This, my MacBook Pro, has been calibrated to 6500. And that's why, certainly on a video, this probably looks very blue, very bright, and just doesn't look right. Even if I turn the brightness down, it won't look quite right. The colours won't be on. But we're talking about the same monitor here, calibrating it to different bits of software. The reason for it is probably that the two companies that produced them, and both of these are Calibrite ones or X-Rite devices, and if I'd used, for example, a Datacolor Spider with it as well, is that the people who wrote the software, when you are calibrating a monitor, you have things you are aiming for, such as the brightness. You're maybe aiming at a gamut or something, although typically for photographic use, you use the full range of colors that the monitor is capable of. They vary. So although all three monitors here, and these are the same make but different models, and this is a different make, obviously, this is the Apple one. Each of these, the display is made of red dots, green dots, blue dots. Now, just how red, how green, how blue the dots are will vary between them. That means that if I'm calibrating different monitors, because the maximum reds, blues, greens vary, I can never really expect a complete match between different monitors. But the original question was using the same monitor and different calibration looking different. And the real reason for that is, as I say, that whoever wrote the software was approaching a generic problem of how to do calibration and create a profile, and the profile just says what the characteristics are. Calibration is what you set something to. That's why you calibrate and profile monitors. You just profile printers. A subtle difference for it there. But monitors, we're aiming at getting as best a calibration as we can. Now, there are lots of balls up in the air at the time, at the same time, and you need to allow for things like grayscale smoothness, color smoothness, all sorts of characteristics which are different for each monitor. When you're doing the software here, you have to try and do your best. That means that the best that monitor calibrator can produce may be on a particular monitor subtly different to what another one can produce. Now, the person who asked me this said, is there a standard, a proper way of doing it? Well, yes and no. Yes, in that you're aiming towards the same point, but no, in that there are no standards specifying exactly how the monitor may perform. There are trade-offs in all the characteristics. So to get an excellent grayscale rendition on a monitor, You may need to do some adjustments and a bit of leeway in the colour adjustments. To get good colour may mean that the grayscale doesn't work so well. That's why calibration software can have things like in it, like an optimize grayscale button that will optimize grayscale smoothness, but perhaps at the cost of some elements of colour. Most bits of the software, certainly the more advanced bits of software, will have ways of checking the quality of the profile. Now, remember that you're using the same instrument that you created the profile on to actually measure how accurate it is, so you've got a problem there. They can be useful in finding out how well the software has been able to get a profile for your monitor. There may be different options in the software, very few in the case of one like this, or quite a lot in the case of one like this. There may be options for fine-tuning it. That means things may be different. So that's the fundamental question of how you can use two calibrators on the same monitor and get slightly different results. That expands into all sorts of areas. So, for example, let's say these two monitors. Now, they're both BenQ ones. They're both attached to this MacBook Pro here. Now, let's just say that I want to get these two monitors the same. Well, since they're both BenQ ones and they're both a few years old, this one's quite a bit older though than this one, they may not be quite the same in characteristics. Because they're not the same characteristics, I can't get them calibrated to the same state, to an identical state. In fact, if you look at, and I remember it in the data color software with the Spider, you could designate one as your main monitor, and then the secondary monitor, you could then adjust to try and get it to look near enough the same as the other monitor. Now, depending on how different this monitor is to this one, you may be able to get it very close. You may not be able to get it very close at all. It's a visual match. Why is it important that I say a visual match? Well, you remember I mentioned the primaries, those are the red, the green, the blue of each screen, are different for each different type of display. How those colours are seen by my visual system will almost certainly be subtly different to how they're seen by your visual system. Even if you're not aware of any degree of colour blindness or anything like that, or any other visual problems, we all see colours subtly different. So that means if I'm trying to match these monitors, really the best I can do is to calibrate one of them as best I can, and then try and visually match the other one. And remember which is my primary monitor, as it were. I may well find that I can set these two monitors so that they look identical to me. Somebody else comes in the office with slightly different colour vision to me, and this one will look different to this one. Now at that point I can go, well, this is the one that's calibrated correctly. I don't care if this one looks better to you, this is the one that's calibrated correctly. This is the problem. Whenever you try and share information, different monitors will be seen by people in subtly different ways. So you want to tie them all together. Whilst I've got the three connected here, I can show you another difference on it. This monitor, as I said, is set to D65, so it looks quite different in this lighting. Remember, you're seeing it recorded by video, where I have to make color choices when I'm actually recording and when I'm doing the editing. So they're going to look different. I can set this particular one here. If I go to the options in it, it's currently set just for its default, and these screens are so accurately configured that for most users you don't need to calibrate them. The settings here are usually good enough to use, certainly for basic photo editing. There are reasons why you might want to do adjustments on it, but I don't go to that. But basically these new screens are so good that they're almost calibrated out of the box. Now, calibration includes brightness as well. So there is no direct calibration because I can make this bright. I can change the brightness of this one. But more importantly, I can add an effect that says True Tone. And in this, it uses the camera here to monitor the lighting, the ambient lighting. and then it decides to just subtly change the weight point. So that's the temperature of the display. So this display has gone warmer. Now I'm going to hope, and I can't tell until I edit this, let's put the brightness down a little bit. Let's try and match it a bit there. Now I'm going to hope that that shows as slightly warmer. I'm going to turn off the true tone so you can see the, go back to the D65. There we go, that's it. So that's accurate for editing. The true tone one is more pleasing on the eye if you're browsing the web and doing stuff, which I do as much on this as I don't use this much for editing. But I do use it for other testing, so I need to know how it's set up. So we've got differences. I mentioned about trying to match this to this. To try and match this display to this one would be very difficult. You need, first of all, these are set to 4000K. Ignore that. That's a special thing I can do because these are hardware calibrated monitors. The calibration process uses the BenQ software rather than the Calibrate X-Rite software to adjust things. And that I can set these as low as 4000. You would not use this for editing at all. It's purely just for video, to match the lights, to match the prints and things. How close could I get this to that? They're wideish. Yeah, I'm going to get broadly close to it, but really if I want to do editing on this screen, I need to set this as the screen that's going to be the authoritatively calibrated profiled one. And then these are just supplements. Or I might go the other way around. I might decide I'm not editing on this. I'm going to edit on this one here, which is the newest. This is a 4K screen. This is only 2.8K or something like that. But it's a real mishmash. Now, I can see why confusion abounds in this. But the simple way of approaching it is get yourself a monitor calibrator. Good screens won't show the effect as much. It has to be a bad screen for monitor calibration really to show a big difference. If you do not need all the functionality you get in the more expensive versions, get one of the cheaper ones. These days, the devices themselves are perfectly accurate for most users. If you want to actually measure how accurate the profiling of the calibration is, then you will need equipment typically 10 times the cost of whatever you used to do this. So I would say I would need something, spectrophotometer, colorimeter, something about between 8 and 10,000 quid's worth would be good enough for this. But what am I going to do with that? I've got no use for it whatsoever. These are good enough for work. Buy as cheap as you can get away with that has the features you need. Basically, you get more adjustments with this. If you don't need more adjustments, save your money, buy a cheaper one. This is very basic though. So do check if any of these monitor calibrators, what the features are. If you don't know what the features are, take that as a handy hint that maybe you probably don't need them. Or perhaps you might use it as an excuse to find out more about colour management. I hope that's sort of answered to some way the original question. And the original question, is there a standard? Not really for this sort of stuff. It's do the best you can. You're aiming at precise things, but your objectives, there's a lot to be juggled about with, and yeah, it may work, it may not work. Most of the time it works. Bit of understanding of why these things though happens does help. Anyway, I hope that was of interest. Please do ask questions. It's people's questions about stuff like this that makes a difference. It's why I do these little videos. If somebody's gone to the trouble of asking, then probably quite a few other people have thought of it as well and not got round to asking. So thanks for watching and bye.